Gambling for God. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Yeah, I was with my wife Ginger last week when she was working in Oklahoma. Just as we were crossing the border back into Texas, we noticed two casinos in southern Oklahoma, and obviously they were there to draw people from Texas across the border to gamble. And so I muttered to Ginger, "What an economic blight on society." That's what gambling is. But then I realized, hold it, I have some Christian friends who visit those casinos. What's going on here? Let's take a look at the Christian Economist view of gambling. And my first subtitle is, it's a tax on people who are bad at math. Okay, picture a roulette wheel. There are 18 red slots, 18 black, and 2 green. The casino collects money as though there were 38 slots, but pays out as though there were 36. Thus, the casino has a 2/38 advantage. To make the math simple, let's round that up to 2 out of 40 because 40 goes into 100 easily 2.5 times. So their advantage is 2.5 times the 2 green ones that they have. So the house advantage is 2 times 2.5%. That's 5%. So gamblers put money on the slots, they spin the wheel. The house pays back 95% and keeps 5%. Want to play again? The house pays back 95%, keeps 5%, and they keep playing. Okay, I'm trying to stay out of the statistical weeds here, so let's assume the casino keeps about 5% on all its games, just to make life easy, right? How much does the Texas lottery keep? Hey, if you play the lottery, you should know. And by the way, there's a reason they call it playing the lottery. Most of my students are astonished to find the Texas lottery keeps, are you ready for this answer? Half the money. 10 times more than the casino keeps. I've often been behind a lottery ticket buyer at a convenience store or at a grocery store. I want to say to the fool in front of me, hey, you know when you give that clerk $10, she's going to give you 5 back. Which, if the two players are the state of Texas and the Texans playing the lottery, that's factually true. As a group of Texans playing the lottery, you get back half your money. You realize the game you're playing? I want to suggest to the player in front of me, hey, meet me in the parking lot, give me 10 and I'll give you 7 back. No, I'm feeling generous today. I'll give you 8. As a matter of fact, call my cell phone anytime you want. I'll meet you in this parking lot with that $8 offer. Yikes, you mean individuals have a 10 times better chance of winning in the casino than in the Texas lottery? Yep. That's why only states can do it. For-profit casinos are denied those kinds of odds by law. Are you getting this? We allow the state of Texas and other states to operate games where the players are 10 times less likely to win than at casinos. Why do we do this? Now that you learned the odds, it's clear that gambling discriminates on people who are uneducated. I mean, they don't know the math. I have a distant family member who's worked at a casino for many years. I asked her one time, do you play the games? From her very insider point of view, she answered, well, not until they change the odds. Now listen, if an insider who knows the odds won't play, why should we? Trying to imagine supporting a football team with 10 players on the field against a team with 11. Your 10-member team might score occasionally, but in the long run, a phrase we use a lot in economics, in the long run, the 11-member team will win the game. And casinos do win the game. Hockey's probably a better example because when a player's in the penalty box, the team is considered shorthanded. And actually, once in a great while, they do score a shorthanded goal. But would a coach actually plan to play shorthanded? That's what you do every time you enter a casino. You're the short-handed team. The casino has a full team. Who do you think's going to win? That is subtopic here. House advantage. There are 3 reasons the house always wins. The house meaning the casino. In the long run. The first has already been explained. They have about a 5% advantage in most casino games, but a 50% advantage in the state lottery. Reason number 2. This is called the rule of large numbers. When they're small numbers, meaning you only play a few times, the results are quite varied. We call that variance in statistics. Some win a lot, Some lose a lot. The players win some, the house wins some. But the longer the game goes on, the more the results regress to the mean, which is 5% in my little example. That's what regression is. It was discovered by a guy named Francis Galton. Next time there's a boring sermon in church, you can do a simple regression analysis. Think about this. Men taller than the U.S. average, the average is 5'10", 5 foot 10 inches tall, tend to have sons shorter than them. That's true in my family. I'm 6'5", or 194 centimeters for those of you who live in civilized countries. My son is 6'1". The height is regressing to the mean of 5'10". The opposite is generally true. A father who is shorter than the mean will have a taller son. That's in general, by the way, a concept we call ceteris paribus, which means all else being equal. If numbers didn't regress to the mean, it wouldn't be the mean. Back to gambling. The more you play, the more your performance regresses to the mean. So the casino's claim of, quote, the more you play, the more you win, end quote, is in opposition to the truth. The statistical truth is, the more you play, the more your performance regresses to the mean, which is a 5% loss for the players and a 5% profit for the casino, 50% for the state. So if you won more than 95% of the money you've played, the casino's factual statement should be, quote, the more you play, the more you will lose, end quote, because your performance will regress to the mean. Listen, reason number 3 is perseverance. When you run out of money, you have to stop. The casino never runs out of money. They know their performance will bounce around, it'll go up and down, around that 5% number, but when they get down, they keep playing. When you get down, you quit. 3 reasons you always lose in general, right? Here's a subtitle. Gambling redistributes wealth. It does not create it. In economics, we talk a lot about opportunity cost. While you're listening to this podcast, you can't listen to another podcast. That's an opportunity cost. Buying the car you're now driving prevented you from buying something else with that money. Same is true of gambling. Money spent on gambling can't be spent on clothes or food or other items. Some will claim that investing in the stock market is gambling. You know, I hesitate to even honor that silly claim with an answer, but I'll give it a couple of minutes here. Look, public stock companies use your investment to build capital structures that provide products and services for their neighbors. They follow the biblical command to, quote, love your neighbor as yourself by supplying products and services your neighbors demand. Gambling does not. You could argue they provide some entertainment, but in large, they take in money and return money. That's it. Other than a little entertainment, they do not provide products and services. Money spent on gambling does not go through the chain of production and distribution that other products and services go through. And think about the gambler's intent. She does not intend to enrich others, as for-profit competitive firms do. She wants to enrich herself at the expense of others. I won't do a complete description of producer and consumer services today, because that's what firms outside the gambling industry do. But briefly, gambling produces huge producer surplus and very little consumer surplus. Said simply, the casino gets rich and the gambler gets poor. Subtopic that gives the main topic for our subject today, called Gambling for God. Walking the streets of London in 1865, William and Catherine Booth preached to the poor, the homeless, the hungry, and the destitute. They talked to thieves, prostitutes, gamblers. Did you hear that? Gamblers. And drunkards were among the first converts to Christianity. They found what is now called the Salvation Army, which operates more than 7,500 centers in communities across the United States. These include food distribution, disaster relief, rehabilitation centers, anti-human trafficking efforts, and a wealth of children's programs. Notice in that little blurb, nothing about gambling. So even though William and Catherine Booth started out trying to redeem gamblers, now the Salvation Army message doesn't say that. Imagine why? Listen to this. So imagine my surprise when I noticed something called the 50-50 raffle at a Dallas Cowboys football game. Fans buy raffle tickets during the game. In the fourth quarter, a name is drawn and a lucky fan wins half the money. The other half goes to the Salvation Army. Well, I guess my joke could be at least somebody wins at the Cowboys games. Don't turn me off, just a joke. Listen to this. An institution that was founded to redeem gamblers is being supported by gambling. How can this be? See, the raffle pot has reached over $100,000 at times at those Cowboys games. Maybe it's notable to look back at the founding of the Salvation Army, where gambling is mentioned as a sin that needs to be redeemed. Then look at today's Salvation Army message and notice that redeeming gambling is no longer part of the purpose statement. I'm tempted to launch into a lecture on mission drift, which Salvation Army may be suffering. But I'll leave that on your own to read a very good book on the subject titled Mission Drift: The Unspoken Crisis Facing Leaders, Charities, and Churches by Chris Horst and Peter Greer. Many of us read it at the university a few years ago. It's a fantastic book. Subtitle: These are God's resources, not ours. There's a good tradition of praying before meals. That's good. My family does it. The reason we do it is to admit that God supplied the food. He also supplied the microphone I'm speaking into and the iPhone that you're listening to right now. So if it's proper to thank God for our food, it should be equally proper to thank Him for the iPhone you're listening to and the car you're driving and the money you're spending on gambling. Would God really endorse your use of His resources for gambling? Another Christian economist, colleague of mine named Hugh Welchel said, God made something out of nothing. Our job is to make something out of something. Good quote, Hugh. Gambling does not make something out of something. When you gamble, you're hoping to increase your personal wealth at the expense of someone else. That's not consistent with the view that God owns everything. A famous quote by Abraham Kuyper. There's not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine, says Abraham Kuyper. Power of Habit. In a book called The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explains how an empty nester woman happened by a casino to pass a boring afternoon. The casino used their devilish techniques to determine she had an addictive personality. How they did it? Well, that's their evil secret sauce, which they won't reveal. But they do have a means of identifying potential addicts. So she played off and on, she won and lost, until one day, not long after inheriting her parents' lifetime of earnings, she lost $250,000 on one of those idle afternoons. While reading the book, I literally had to put it down. $250,000 in one afternoon. Look, the devil never takes a day off. And he's often looking over our shoulder, as explained by C.S. Lewis in The Screwtape Letters. Well, Biblical Economic Policy, this book written by myself and Sergei Saydometov, we describe 10 biblical commandments of economics. Gambling violates these. One of ours is called work is good, because when you gamble, you don't enrich yourself by working. You hope to enrich yourself by luck. And as pointed out earlier, you want to get richer by making someone else poor. One of our others is don't covet. You may have noticed that Moses had this one also. It's in our 10 commandments of biblical economics. You may have noticed we borrowed this one from Moses. When you gamble, you want to get the money other people have. We also have one called honest measures. On this particular one, you can't really blame the state for keeping 50% of the money. That statistic is public. Obviously, they don't use it in their commercials, but there is some level of caveat emptor, sorry for my bad Latin, is called buyer beware, that provides some low level of protection for those who promote gambling. In other words, you should know better. Love your neighbor as yourself is one of our 10. If you love the neighbor across the craps table, why would you want him to lose so you could win? Because that's the only way you can win at gambling. One of our others is take care of widows and orphans. You have the opportunity cost. Give the money to the poor or gamble with it. Yeah. Chinese view of external locus of control. Sorry if it feels like I've taken a pretty sharp left turn here, but stay tuned for 1 minute. I'll be back. For my trips to China, I've learned they have a very external locus of control. Locus is a simple Latin term that means located. So locus of control goes across a spectrum from internal to external. Internal people believe they're in control of their future. External people think their life is determined by fate. I explore this more depth in podcast 21 called Economic Humanism. Now, since the Chinese have such a strong external locus of control, they're prime candidates for gambling addiction. This explains why the Chinese Gambling Center of Macau is one of the richest places on earth. Often, as a matter of fact, in national economic measures, Macau is listed as a separate region, although it's merely a city on the east coast of China. Chinese have a dangerous proclivity to gambling because they believe that fate is in control. Christians are somewhere in the middle of that spectrum from internal to external. We believe there is a sovereign God who gives us free will to follow him or reject him. The Chinese believe they have no control over their lives. During one of my visits to China, it was explained the government was building a 34-mile bridge from Hong Kong to Macau. It was completed for the specific purpose of making it easier for the 7 million Hong Kongers to go lose their money. Who thinks that's a good use of $18 billion worth of public funds? Maybe the same people who run the Texas lottery and the 50-50 raffle at the Cowboys games. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist, where our slogan is, fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time.